our players jumping, our players walking, and all that is great. But you'll notice, at least in my opinion, one thing that we're missing, we have visuals, we have the input, but I think we need some sound. And we're going to be using sound in a number of places in this project, but I think it's important to get sound just for our player walking around. So to do that, what we're going to do is go back into our player script once again, and we're going to add some more variables up at the top here. So I'm going to add some space between where this rigid body stuff is and our jump stuff. And I'm going to say public audio clip. And then what we're going to get is not just one audio clip, but several. And to do that, we're going to do what's called an array. So if we add these two square brackets, and we get that by not holding the shift key when we get our curly bracket, we get square brackets instead. And we're going to say public audio clip array StepSounds. And we're going to give that a semicolon at the end. We're also going to say public float step distance, and we're going to set that equal to 1f. And then we're going to say vector 3 previous pause and audio source AS. And that's because we need to have an audio source that's going to play our sounds, and this previous position and step distance are going to determine how far we need to move in order for a step sound to play. What we now need to do is drop down into our start method. We're going to give ourselves some space once again. We're going to say AS equals get component audio source, and open and close parentheses there. We're going to say previous pause is equal to transform.position. That looks good to me. And then we're going to go ahead and hit save. Now we're going to go ahead and drop down into our fixed update method, the one up top, or the one in the middle of our script here. And we're going to say at the end, after current velocity, we're going to say if vector 3 dot distance is for transform dot position, comma, our previous pause, that is if we've moved far enough away, from our previous position, if that value is greater than our step distance, that means that we moved far enough away to trigger a step. But what we also want to do is make sure that we're on the ground, because if we're floating in the air and we're playing step sounds, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? So after step distance here, we're going to add 2 the and sign, and we're actually going to go down to our jump code, and we're going to copy this raycast here, the one that we used for the jump, and we're going to highlight it from physics to the first parentheses, and we're going to paste it into our if statement here. And the reason for that being, again, we want to make sure we're on the ground when we're playing step sounds, because otherwise that wouldn't make very much sense. Then we're going to add our brackets, and we're going to say as.play one shot. And what this does is plays any clip that we give it, any piece of audio that we give our audio source, it'll play it one time. And that's exactly what we want from a step sound. And we're going to say step sounds. We're going to put our square brackets in again. And we're going to say random.range, open and close parentheses. And we're going to say 0 to StepSounds.length. And there's a comma in between 0 and StepSounds.length. Make sure you don't miss that. And then we want to make sure we have our closed parentheses for the range. So we have it should look like this. There should be parentheses, square bracket, parentheses at the end of this line, and then our semicolon. So that's going to tell our audio source to play a random version of one of our step sounds. I believe we have 5 to choose from. We want it to pick a random one every time. So that's going to play a random sound every step we take. And then we're going to say previous pause is equal to transform.position. So now our previous position is going to update, and that means that if we stay still, we're not going to keep playing sounds over and over again. Now we can go ahead and save our script again, Control S, or using the buttons up top. We need to go back to our editor and select our player object once Unity does its thing here. And what we need to do is go into our step sounds thing. There should be a drop down arrow that appears here. We want to drop that down, increase size to 4, or I think it might be 5. Actually, yes, it is 5. So we'll make it 5. And then in our project panel, we're going to navigate from assets. We're going to go into resources, sounds, footsteps, and you'll see all that here. Make sure we select our player again, and then we're going to drag each of these sounds into each of the 5 fields here. And if you accidentally click off it, you can just click your player again. And now we've got our 5 sounds all assigned in our player script. So now you'll see if I hit play and I start walking around, we can't hear anything. Why is that? And those of you who may have done sound before might know it's because we forgot to add our audio source. So what we need to do is hit this add component button down here and type audio source. And now I've got this nice audio source in here. This is going to control playing sounds for us. We want to untick this play on awake option because we don't have a clip to play on awake. We want to make sure that's down. And now with that component in place, if we hit play, we start walking around, we hear steps. But it sounds like they're going a little fast. I mean, that's a bit ridiculously fast. I don't think we're stepping that much when we walk around. So what that tells me is that we need to increase our step distance. So let's stop playing. Let's go up to our step distance variable and let's increase it to say, excuse me, let's try 3. So if I hit play and now I start walking, there we go. That feels a lot more natural, doesn't it? And if I hit jump, the sound stops playing in the air. So now we're walking around and we can hear it. And that sounds pretty good to me. I think that's a pretty close reflection as to what this hard cave floor would sound like if we were running around on it. So that's great. So once you have all that done, you can go ahead and save your scene and you are ready to move on into week 2.